So have you ever been on a Zorb? One of those giant inflatable bubble things that you climb into and roll down a big hill. It's human equivalent of a cocktail shaker and the cause of a queasy stomach at the beginning of many a stag do. Well, coming into 2025 feels a lot like being in one of those, both for me and I assume pretty much everyone else. Now, I'm not going to get into all the news and the politics of the stuff. You already know all that. I'm not going to whinge again about my personal woes. I'm sure you've had enough of that. I'm going to talk about starting as you mean to go on. And how do I mean to go on? I intend to go on by doing whatever the bloody well I please. That's how. And so I'm going to define that in this episode. And that, by definition, means also defining what I'm not going to be doing. Now, let's start the new year on a positive note, shall we? Since it's all going to hell on a paint palette, we might as well start off as we mean to go on, right? So I'm going to start off with the things that I am going to do. So firstly, I am going to try new things. I ended the new year actually doing quite a lot of this already. I had a bit of a foray into the world of abstract art and creating sort of abstract messes on canvases. This came about partly because I just needed something new to be focusing on, and partly because I don't have a lot of money and I have a whole bunch of old sort of canvases and materials and stuff that I kind of need to either resurrect or repurpose or reuse, and I couldn't really afford to buy new stuff. Since all of this stuff was expendable, I decided to play around a bit and allow my creative juices to flow and try my hand at abstract art and see where I got on, and knowing that if I ruined a bunch of canvases it wouldn't matter too much because they were already kind of knackered anyway. So I spent a lot of time doing that at the end of last year and sort of moved into this sort of new phase of adding more sort of symbolism and stuff in my art, which was actually a symptom of me trying to sort of impose a bit more meaning and structure onto my abstract paintings. It turns out that I'm not very good at just doing purely abstract stuff, since I love my work to have some sort of meaning. So I started to impose and superimpose various sort of structures and form on those, and also with these old canvases let the thing that was on them come through in the piece to sort of create yet further sort of structure and meaning. So I was already in quite an experimental phase, and that hasn't really stopped. I over Christmas I was gifted a rotary tool, and if you've never used these, they're a little sort of handheld drill thing that you use almost like a pencil to draw, etch, or carve things out of various materials. So you can use it to etch onto metal or carve into wood. I've used it to carve lino for lino cuts and all sorts of things. So they come like a drill. You can just put lots of different bits in them, and they're really great for, I mean, a lot of people use them for just, standard work like buffing up bits of metal for a car or whatever, or cleaning things and polishing things. But they're used quite a lot in the craft world for carving and creating prints and stuff like that. So I was really excited to get this, and I've got a lot of wood lying around the place. So I started carving patterns in the wood using this thing, and I've really, really enjoyed it, despite the fact that I spend my time permanently covered in sawdust. It's made a total mess of my workshop, but then that's what it's there for. I've had some successes and some failures already, and we're only 2 weeks into the new year. And I'm really, really loving it, and I'm doing fairly well, I suppose. But I seem to be sort of progressing quite quickly and sort of figuring out how things work. And this is a process that I absolutely love. I love trying new things and finding out new things and exploring new things. And it's also a medium that lends itself more to sort of crafty things that will probably be easier to sell and that are a little less imposing than my usual type of work. But I can still squeeze in my sort of normal flourishes and also bringing some of the things that I've learned from my abstract work and the symbolic work that I was bringing into that. So I'm really, really enjoying trying new things. But there's a certain amount of anxiety that comes with this, and also a certain amount of expense. So obviously it was quite a cheap rotary tool. I don't have a lot of money. The bits that came with it were almost useless. So I had to buy a whole bunch of new bits. And they're not very expensive, and you can buy them on Amazon or whatever, or even down your local hardware store. But that was a bit of extra expense that I wasn't expecting. And then, am I going to be able to do anything with this? Is it going to work? Is anyone going to be interested in what I do? The results of the first few things that I produced were pretty cool. I really liked them, but they were quite messy, and there are plenty of people out there using computers and machinery to do wood carving. And so, that my stuff is not going to look as good as that. And perhaps that will make it less desirable. But I like to think that in this day and age of AI sort of swallowing up everything creatively, that people are looking for stuff that has rough edges simply because it means it probably wasn't created by an AI or a robot. If I get some money in the new year, I will buy a few more bits and pieces for it, just so I can branch out a bit, try different things, try more detailed work, and try and neaten up my work a bit. But I'm quite happy with what I've got at the moment, and none of it cost a lot of money. And it's providing a lot of scope for me. And I've got so much bits. I'm a bit of a squirrel when it comes to collecting old bits of wood and stuff. I don't like throwing anything away, so I had stacks of the stuff. And so we had a couple of old beds that had the wooden slats underneath them, and I deconstructed those because we needed to get rid of them because they were broken and rotten. And I saved all the bits of timber from those that were still in good condition, and I just had them sitting around, so I can just glue those together now and make sheets of wood, and it's pretty decent quality stuff. And this is all free. I paid for that bed for my kid years ago, like a decade ago. And I could have just taken that to dump, but no, I've got this free stuff now, and so I don't have to buy it. It's another thing that I don't have to buy and I can do this work instead of buying new canvases. So it's all quite positive from that respect. Will I keep doing this? Maybe. Who knows with me? I don't really know, and that's not really the point. What I'm not saying is I'm going to spend the rest of this year becoming a wood carver and making wood carving art. It might well be the case that I do that, but it's not my aim. My aim is to have fun with a new medium. And I think, to add to that, and this is another carrying on from where I was at the end of last year, I intend to use what I've got. And this is partly because I don't have much money, and partly because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do from the perspective of me having a bunch of crap lying around the place that needs using or throwing away. It's right from the perspective of saving money. It's right from the perspective of the environment and not creating waste when I don't need to. So I'm going to try and sort of reduce the stockpiles of stuff that I've accumulated in my studio and workshop, and try and make something of it that's both fun to make and perhaps I can sell. And I love the idea of that because it's a bit of something from nothing. I'm not really getting something from nothing. I mean, it was the tree that grew the wood, not me. But it's something that I didn't have to pay anything extra really for. That I can either sell to someone or gift to someone that will bring some lightness into the world that cost me almost nothing, or cost me just what I'd already paid for a different reason. It's got, those old beds have got a second life, which is an idea that I love. So, next do. Make new friends and connect with old ones. And this podcast has been amazing for that. My art group here in Octorada has been brilliant for this. And doing these interviews, so if you've been listening to my podcast, I've got 3 interviews now published, and I've got another one coming, and I'm on the hunt for other people who might want to do an interview. So if you're interested, then get in touch with me. And that's really led to me forming sort of closer relationships with those people. Some of them I'd never met before, and just generally sort of really listening to people. I'm not a great listener in general. I tend to get overexcited and talk over people and try and make myself heard, and it's just part of my ADHD and autism. I don't really mean to talk over people. Like, it's just something that I do. But when I'm interviewing someone, I'm forced to sit and listen, as it wouldn't be much of an interview if I was yapping on over them. And listening back to the 4 that I've done, I think I did a pretty good job of that, actually. But it forced me to sit down and listen to someone else's story, someone else's side of things, and really sort of ponder it and think about it, and try and react, and try and get the best out of that person. And I've really enjoyed doing that. So I'm really looking forward to doing more. But I'm sort of running out of interview candidates, so that's going to force me to go and hunt down some more people, which I can go through the same process with. And I also get to introduce those people to the world. So not only am I making new friends, in theory, they're making new friends, or at least they're making new fans or people who appreciate what they do. So it's something I'm really keen to do more of. And also, I spent the last 2 years putting on art exhibitions and art events around my local area. I've met lots of people doing that, and I'd like to keep growing that base and keep extending the reach of the people who we can work with and help in their artistic journey, and making new friends, and taking in new inputs. And there's nothing better than meeting other artists and exchanging ideas and exchanging advice and that type of thing, and just sort of getting to know people. And I've really, really enjoyed that. And I'm not very good at it, being autistic. But this sort of framework of the local community and the podcast has really allowed me to go and reach people on my terms, but also on their terms, and on a level playing field that makes it a lot easier for me to meet people. Related to that, I'm going to keep finding new artists. I think I started a podcast about art. Really from the perspective of making it. I speak mostly about making art on this because I think that's where the majority of the value is, certainly for me, in terms of art and its therapeutic value. And so as a result, I don't talk that much about artists, art history, art theory, that type of thing. And it's not really what this is about. But I'm also not ignorant to the fact that a lot of people get their kicks and their therapy from consuming art, be that going to an art gallery or going to the theatre, the cinema, and so on. And those type of people far outnumber us creators. And I acknowledge that. And it's not that I'm ignoring it. It's just that I try to keep this balanced, and my focus is where it is. But I have, I have artists and illustrators who I love, and filmmakers and so on, and writers. And I like to talk about those, and I squeeze them in wherever I can. But I think in the process of having to make this, and also in the process of generally, meeting new people, I've been introduced to new artists over the last year or so. And those have brought me a lot of pleasure, but also expanded the boundaries of my work and pushed me into new areas. For example, I dug out a book about a Chinese artist called Zhao Wu Qi last year. It was actually something I've had in my collection for a long time, but largely ignored. It was given to me by my friend Imo. It belonged to her mother, and she had a whole ton of art books. And after she died, this was like 20 years ago or something, Imo had to sort of get rid of them, and she asked all her arts inclined friends if they wanted them. So I went and collected a few books, and this was one of them. And I sort of picked it up, leafed through it at the time, thought, this looks interesting, I'll take this, and then largely forgot about it. And for some reason, I think probably in the move, when we moved house last year, I found it again and was leafing through it and was absolutely blown away. It's all abstract. It's all very organic and mood related. And it's all really quite beautiful. And that's one of the main drivers for me trying abstract as part of my portfolio of work. And so that's amazing. And then another artist who I've been aware of for a long time, but hadn't really spent much time appreciating is Grayson Perry, obviously, one of the British art rock stars, but I'd never really appreciated how good his art is. And the ceramics but also the breadth of different mediums and styles and themes he works with, and it's just simply incredible. And I've got a book for Christmas about him, and I absolutely adore it. And there's been bits of that sort of social commentary, all the symbolism, but also thinking about different mediums, and the wood carving is part of this. And the thinking already about what I can do to get more into three-dimensional work, like his ceramics. I doubt very much I'll be into ceramics by the end of the year, but who the hell knows? And that's been a massive inspiration to me, and I love this stuff, and I think that I can sometimes be a bit lazy in terms of seeking out new art and new artists, or new sort of mediums and approaches and subject matters. And part of me trying to make this a great podcast and to try and keep it as open and interesting as possible, I've been researching a lot of artists. I spent a lot of time reading about Frida Kahlo at the end of last year for one of my episodes, and that was incredible. And it's really forcing me to sort of look at other things, but also look hard, as opposed to sort of wafting past something in a gallery or a book or something, to actually really think about what it is that person was doing. And it's really enriching my understanding of art and my appreciation of it, as well as feeding into my own artworks. So I think as I go into the rest of this year, I think I'll find myself getting further and further into the realms of art, and particular artists and movements and stuff. And I'm really looking forward to that. I also want to discover, artists that are out there. I mean, Grayson Perry's still alive, but there's lots of other much smaller artists and less well-known artists and really creative people. And if I can get some of those to come on my podcast, then rock and roll. And there's some people out there some artists out there that I already, I've either interviewed or worked with or get on really well with. So I'd like to try some collaborations. Me and Mark Burden, who was the interviewee on my second interview just before Christmas. We've long talked about collaborating because there's a big sort of overlap between our works, and we really get on well, and we really think similarly. And there's this whole thing around the overlap of art and science and maths and technology that we're really fascinated with. And I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do there. We've also discussed doing some audio or video stuff for the new year, either for this podcast or for a new one that talks about the overlap of art and science, maths, technology. And so there's some collaborations there. I've also discussed in the past working with Caitlin. I've interviewed them for the next interview that you'll see coming out probably next week. And I've talked to them about collaborating a few times because, again, there's quite a big overlap there. But I'd like to find some new people, some new artists to collaborate with, and different mediums and forms. I've got quite a few things on the boil for my sort of local community in the coming year. Not least, I'm building a website, and we're talking about different ways to distribute content, artworks, films, performances, all of these things via the web. I mean, it all feels quite old school right now, and I've been working in the internet since my early 20s, so nearly 30 years. So all of this is quite old school, but it's still necessary. And for a local community group, getting a strong sort of digital profile is not easy to do. And so I'm quite pleased to sort of lend my skills to doing that. So, and I think that will lead to lots of really amazing, inspiring ideas about how to merge the digital world and the physical world. And I'm hoping that will trigger off quite a few collaborations and also hopefully influence my own work. And finally, what am I going to do? I'm going to keep spreading the love. I'm going to keep encouraging people. I'm going to keep recording this podcast and I hope and spreading, the love around using creativity as a way to manage and maintain mental health, to just as a way to make yourself happy, as a way to bring, some light and beauty into the world and to get people talking and bring people together. It's a very big mantra of mine that the antidote to all the horrible things that are going on in the world at the moment is community. The thing that we've lost is community. The thing that we've lost is that connection. And that could be online, but I'm thinking more specifically in the real world, because online relationships are always somewhat disjointed. And I know that there are some people out there who find it difficult to interact in the real world. And I'm all good with that. You need to take your community where you find it. But if you can get outside your front door, go talk to people that live in your locality and collaborate and work and talk and exchange ideas with them. Those are the things that are going to break down the barriers that are causing the divisions in the world that we live in at the moment. And I think it's essential that we do that so that people stop just hating on anyone that they don't know or they don't understand, that looks or acts or behaves slightly different from them. The best thing is about the art community is everyone's in it. I've got kids right through to, nonagenarians in my art group, and they've all got different attitudes. They've all got different approaches, and sometimes it doesn't gel, but sometimes it gels in ways you can't possibly predict. And all the while, maybe this person and that person might never be close friends or even anything more than an acquaintance or a member of a group together, but they still have to come together and appreciate each other's works or appreciate the effort that each other is putting in, and ideas get exchanged. And if those people are aware that they're different, either in their political views or they look different or they behave differently, but they can still appreciate that other person, their works, their impact on the world, then that's going to break down one little barrier. And I know that it doesn't seem like a lot, but lots of little barriers being broken down add up to a very big barrier being broken down. And that's the barrier that the predominant and growing power base in the world is trying to do. They need us divided. They need us looking suspiciously at each other, because that's how they maintain control and power, and that's how they continue to concentrate the wealth in their pockets. And the worst thing for them is collaboration, community, love, and integration. And it's not a political thing. It's simply something that we're missing. If you talk to people on either side of the political spectrum, they'll all tell you the same thing. In one way or the other, they'll all be saying, well, where's the community? Why isn't anyone talking to each other? Why do I feel like an alien? And this is exactly what they want. Everyone blaming everyone else and being suspicious of everyone else. Bring people together, collaborate, talk to other people. You don't have to start off a big art group. You don't have to, do anything other than be open to talking to other people, be open to joining a club, doing whatever it is, show your art and talk to people about it. Oh, I said that was my last, but it isn't. My last thing for my dues in 2025 is aim high. And despite all the horrors of 2024, it was actually quite a big year for me. I achieved lots of really big things, a couple of absolutely huge exhibitions. I started a podcast. I met lots of new people. I just did loads of cool stuff, and I was highly creative. And because of my job situation, I had more free time to be creative. So it was a really quite a year for me, despite the fact that my mental health for a good part of it was completely among the worst states I've ever been in. And if I can do that when I'm totally broken, what can I do when I'm in a reasonably good state like I am now? And the sky's the limit. And I'm not gonna kid myself. I'm still on the road to recovery, and I still have the limitations that I had both psychologically and financially as it stands right now. And so I've got a big hill to climb. But if I achieve what I achieved in 2024 and then some in 2025, I'll have achieved some really big things. And that's such a sort of positive thought and something that I'm really going to hold on to. And I'm not here to set unachievable goals for myself. I'm just simply saying, if I did that when I was broken, what can I do when I'm better? And so I'm going to put on bigger shows. I'm going to look to do more creative and more interesting things, reach more people, and I'm going to try and not exhaust myself. The achievements I made in 2024 were amazing, but they did burn me out. And I think it doesn't really matter what mental state I'm in. I'm susceptible to burning myself out, particularly when I'm having to, deal with a lot of people. So I do need to look after myself and and check in on myself regularly and just make sure I'm okay, and make sure that when I'm scheduling things in, that I am doing so in such a way that I give myself downtime and I give myself a break from people, from doing work and so on. And I think I'm getting a lot better at that now, recognizing the signs of when I'm getting into a bit of a state. So I'm hoping I can go bigger and better in 2025, but also not break myself in the process. And I guess that's the one aim above all other aims, is to not break myself. And that brings me quite neatly onto the don'ts. And the number one don't is don't break myself again. I'm not going to break myself again if I can possibly avoid it. The world is going crazy, and so there could be a lot of stresses coming out from all over the place that make it hard to maintain my mental health, and most people will be in the same boat. And that is what it is. The best we can do is to shore ourselves up and make sure that when things are relatively calm, like they are at the moment, that we are recharging ourselves and making sure that we're ready for what might come next. And if nothing bad comes next, if everything is rosy and everyone's happy, then you've got that extra energy to do something else. But I think it's not pessimistic to say I need to be fit and ready for whatever the world may throw at me, both good and bad. And to do that, I need to be not completely broken again. Um, I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on in the world at the moment. It's really easy to end up doom scrolling on. Well, I don't use Twitter because it's evil, but I'm on Blue Sky at the moment, and it's very easy to get stuck in a scrolling loop on that, outraging yourself about what Donald Trump or Elon Musk has done now. And it's fine, and I get my fix, but I got very badly addicted to Twitter back in the day, and it was very, very destructive for me. And so I'm much better at rationing myself on that stuff. And plus, it's a good place for me to sort of rant and talk about stuff that I care about, and to share my artwork and so on. And so, I just need to be careful that don't get too emotionally dragged into this stuff. I'm really worried and outraged about what's going on everywhere. But on the other hand, I'm not going to be able to fight the good fight if I'm permanently angry or permanently depressed or broken or anxious. I'm much better off keeping half an eye on what's going on, focusing on the things that I can do and the things that I can change, and just be ready to maneuver if things change for the worse or indeed for the better. The other thing I'm not going to do is the exact opposite of that. I'm not going to sweat the small stuff. And this is a thing I'm actually relatively good at anyway, which is just things happen from a day-to-day basis. There's no need to attach too much emphasis on any bad thing that happens, or mistake, or fuck up, or piece of art that doesn't work, or something that I break or whatever. And I need to keep doing that, because all the little things will build up and build up and build up, and suddenly they'll all together amount to a big thing, and that's a big bad thing. And you're better off sweating the good stuff, and looking for all the good little things and letting them build up to a big good thing, right? And so I'm not going to sweat the small stuff, and I'm going to try and help the people around me not do that. Next, I'm not going to worry too much about what people think of me and my work. Again, I'm all right at this, but I can get sucked into this vortex of self-doubt quite easily. And I'm aware, my logical brain is well aware that, I shouldn't pay too much attention about what people say. I shouldn't pay too much attention to the fact that I don't sell a lot of art, and that my art is sort of a fairly niche thing. I'll find my audience eventually, and if people don't like my stuff, it's just that they're not my audience. If people don't like the way I present myself, or when I'm sort of presenting my sort of, I don't want to use the word authentic 'cause I hate it, but the unmasked me, if they don't like that, then they don't like it. I'm a bit Marmite as a person. You either like me or you don't, and that's fine. And and people are welcome to dislike me. And I know the people who do like me, and they're good people, um, because they like me, obviously. Um, so I just need to not worry too much about that sort of stuff, and try my hardest not to get sucked into these doom spirals of low self-esteem, and low self-confidence. And next, relating to what I was saying earlier about social, I spent way too much time in 2024 stressing about my social profiles and how the algorithms were ignoring me and my art and all this stuff, particularly Meta, i.e. Facebook and Instagram, but I even had a foray into TikTok. Blue Sky is working quite well for me. Twitter I ditched. But the the Meta is broken. Meta is not fit for purpose anymore. Very few people I know enjoy it. I don't see the posts from people I care about. I don't see the posts from stuff that I followed. No one seems to see my stuff. I spent some advertising money on increasing my Facebook and Instagram follow account, and it had absolutely no effect on my engagement because follows don't matter on Meta anymore. If people don't regularly like your stuff, they won't see it. And maybe that's right. Maybe that's the way it should be, but it wasn't always that way, and people seemed happier before. And quite frankly, what I'm jostling with, what I'm fighting for attention with, is not other artists or other celebrities. I'm jostling for visibility with advert after advert after advert, and that's quite galling. And I recognise that Meta needs to make money, but they have made a lot of money, and their agenda, as recent news about them would suggest, is not very focused on their users. So and we can see that they've turned into a very political entity, and I've got very little interest, and so I'm unlikely to be actually winding down my output to Meta, and I'll be looking for different channels to promote myself, my art, this podcast, and to try and be more creative, and to try and find my audience where my audience are, and find them in a way that suits them, and makes them want to come and experience the things that I make. And I don't think, unless Meta changes dramatically, they have much of a place in that. And finally, I'm not going to worry if no one listens to this podcast. I get a fair few listeners. I'm not Mr. Beast. I'm not Joe Rogan, thank God. I don't have legions of listeners now. And maybe I never will. Partly I do this for me. And it's something I enjoy doing. I get a lot out of, and it opens all sorts of doors for me. And I do hope more people listen to this, and hope, but only if they get value from it. And I want to reach people. I want to spread the word on art as a therapeutic outlet. But I've got a little group of listeners, and thank you all. I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in regularly. And please tell more people, and please spread the word. And I don't expect to ever make any money out of this, really. I don't really know where my end game here is. It's, as ever, my mantra. It's about the process. Just keep turning up, and we'll see. But if I could get a wider listener base, and I could make a little bit of money to cover my costs on this, and that would be incredible, and it would really be motivating. So I'm not going to worry too much if people aren't listening, but that isn't going to stop me from trying to get more people to listen. So that'll do for now. I could probably talk about a bunch more stuff, and I've probably missed some absolutely mission critical things. I think should consider as already said, the obvious things, like I'm going to look after my family. I'm going to try and make some money. I'm going to try and spend more time outdoors. All of these things that I do sort of anyway, and I need to keep those things up. I've really tried to sort of focus here on the stuff that relates directly to my artistic creative endeavors and my mental health. And I'm doing this in the new year. This is kind of when people expect it. I think if I piped up with this in the middle of July, people would think I'm a bit weird. But, the new year, Christmas, this stuff is a bit of an arbitrary boundary. It has some significance in terms of, the path of the earth around the sun and so on. And, we've reached the shortest day and we're now getting to longer days again. And obviously the Christmas New Year period is very much sort of a break, but it's in some ways it's sort of arbitrary and a bit meaningless, but psychologically on most people, certainly in the Western world, it has a lot of significance. And so, we get this concept of New Year's resolutions. Now the podcast episode here, this is not a New Year's resolution. The things that I've said here are not New Year's resolutions. They're just intense. They're just an agenda or maybe even like an attitude that I want to take to this year, because I don't really believe in New Year's resolutions. I think they're more often than not destructive and counterproductive, because if you set big goals and you fail, you feel like a failure. If you set small goals, then you just feel like you're being lazy, and will those goals, regardless of whether you achieve them or not, regardless of whether they were valid or relevant, will they have any meaning in a year's time? Will they have any meaning in a month's time? Jesus, the world we're in at the moment, who the fuck knows, right? So I don't really see that they're very useful. But my attitude on achieving stuff, for better or for worse, is you sort of pick a destination, and you head vaguely towards that and you hope you get there, but you don't mind too much if you don't. And along the way, you might see a better destination anyway and zip off to that. And you shouldn't consider not having got to your first choice of destination as a failure. It's just, you got to pick a direction. If you're setting off on your jetty across the water, you see a bunch of islands in front of you. Pick the one that looks like you might want to go there. But if you end up at one of the other ones, then so be it. Worst case scenario, you just get back on your boat again and head back towards your first choice. So I sort of view things like that. I see the things that I've said in this episode as less like the destination and more like the boat itself. And just this is what I'm going to take with me. Here's the things I'm going to put in my boat. Here's my general direction. And here's how I'm going to approach it and the attitude I'm going to set out with. And I'm really excited to see where this all ends up. And it's going to be interesting. I think I would be, and everyone else will be, incredibly surprised if we end up at this time next year looking back at 2025 and going, well, that was a boring year. Not much happened. I find that extremely unlikely. My life has to change in the next year. I have to find some money from somewhere, and I might well have to move out of this house. So we might have another house move on the go, and any number of other things could occur. And so, look, it's a bit scary. I'm certainly not in a solid position from my financial perspective, but it's going to be interesting. As the old adage goes, may you have interesting times. Well, I do hope my times and your times are a good type of interesting. And I hope we all get through this unscathed. But as I keep saying, and I'll keep saying over and over again, it's a journey that counts. Focus on the journey and see where it takes you, and maybe we can swap some more stories in a few months' time. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.